Every single second somewhere on Earth, someone is opening a Coca Cola. Every second. Not every minute. Every second. By the time you finish watching this video, Coca Cola will have been consumed over 100 million times. 100 million. And the company behind that number has been hiding something from every single one of those people since 1886. This is not a story about a fizzy drink. This is a story about cocaine, about scientists who were paid to lie, about communities stripped of their water, about workers murdered for asking for fair pay, and about how one red can become so deeply embedded in human culture that questioning it feels almost unnatural. Almost. Because once you know what is behind that red label, you will never look at it the same way again. Atlanta, Georgia. 1886. A pharmacist named John Pemberton is sitting in his backyard, mixing ingredients in a brass kettle over an open fire. He is a Civil War veteran. He developed a morphine addiction after being wounded in battle. And he is desperately trying to find something that will ease the pain. What he creates will become the most consumed beverage in human history. He mixes coca leaf extract with cola nut syrup and carbonated water. He takes it to a local pharmacy. They sell it for 5 cents a glass as a medicinal tonic. It sells out the same day. Not because of clever marketing, not because of the taste, not because of the carbonation, because of what was inside it. The coca leaf extract in Pemberton's original recipe contained cocaine. Not accidentally, not in trace amounts. Cocaine. Deliberately, as the active ingredient. Coca Cola in 1886 was not a refreshing drink. It was a cocaine delivery system, sold to men, women, and children, and marketed as a cure for headaches, fatigue, depression, and, with breathtaking irony, morphine addiction. The same addiction its own creator was suffering from. And it spread across America faster than anything the country had ever seen. For 17 years, Coca-Cola contained cocaine. By 1903, mounting public pressure finally forced the company to remove it from the recipe. But here is what they understood that nobody else did. The addiction was never really about the cocaine. It was about the ritual, the daily reach, the moment of opening something familiar that made you feel just slightly better than you did before. Cocaine had planted that habit in millions of people across America. But the habit itself was the truly valuable thing. They needed something to replace it, something that would keep billions of people reaching for a can every single day, something that delivered the same reliable lift, something that was not a controlled substance. The answer was sugar. A single can of Coca-Cola contains 39 grams of sugar, 10 teaspoons, in one can, consumed in minutes. The World Health Organization recommends no more than 25 grams of added sugar per day for an adult. One can of Coke blows past that before lunch. Now here is the question that changes everything. Did Coca-Cola know their product was causing harm? This is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of documented fact. Uncovered by researchers at the University of California in 2016. In the 1960s, a growing body of scientific evidence was beginning to connect sugar consumption directly to heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. The research was building. The questions were getting harder to ignore. So the Sugar Research Foundation, which represented Coca-Cola and other major sugar producers, did something that should make every person watching this genuinely angry. They paid scientists at Harvard University the equivalent of $50,000 in today's money to produce research with one specific, predetermined conclusion. Shift the blame for heart disease away from sugar and onto fat. The scientists took the money. The studies were published in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most prestigious medical journals on Earth, with no disclosure of the funding source, and no mention that the conclusion had been purchased before a single experiment was conducted. And for the next 4 decades, the entire direction of global nutritional science was deliberately pointed away from sugar. The low-fat movement that swept the world in the 1970s and 1980s. The fat-free products that filled every supermarket shelf in every country. The decades of advice telling billions of people to cut fat and count calories, all of it was built on research that was secretly bought and paid for by the sugar industry. And while the world was cutting fat and counting calories and following advice from scientists they trusted completely, Coca Cola kept selling. But it did not stop there. In 2015, it emerged that Coca Cola had been secretly funding an organization called the Global Energy Balance Network. The organization presented itself as an independent scientific body promoting research on obesity. It published studies arguing that lack of exercise rather than diet was the primary driver of the obesity epidemic. It was not independent. It was funded almost entirely by Coca Cola. When the funding was exposed publicly, the organization shut down within months. The studies it produced remained in circulation for years. Now, here is where the story moves from outrage to something that is genuinely difficult to comprehend. Because Coca-Cola does not just sell you something that harms your body from the inside. It takes something essential from communities that have no power to stop it. Water. Producing 1 liter of Coca-Cola requires approximately 200 liters of water when you account for the full manufacturing process. In 2003, a Coca-Cola bottling plant in Plachamata, in the Kerala region of southern India, was consuming approximately 1 million liters of groundwater every single day. Local farmers began reporting that their wells were running dry. Water that families had relied on for generations was disappearing directly into Coca-Cola's production process. What remained in the local wells was tested independently and found to be contaminated. Sludge that Coca-Cola had been distributing to local farmers as free fertilizer was found to contain cadmium and lead, heavy metals, given freely to farming communities as an agricultural gift. After years of community protests, the plant was shut down by local authorities in 2004. Coca-Cola challenged the decision in court. The Kerala High Court ruled that Coca-Cola had no right to extract groundwater to the detriment of the local community. Coca-Cola appealed. And throughout the entire process, through every court hearing and every protest and every contaminated well, Coca-Cola never once issued a public apology to the community of Plachamata. Not one word. And this was not an isolated case. In Mexico, where Coca-Cola consumption is among the highest on Earth, and where diabetes affects approximately 14% of the adult population, researchers documented Coca-Cola bottling operations extracting water from already depleted aquifers in regions where local communities already lacked reliable access to clean drinking water. The company extracting the water and the communities going without it existed in exactly the same geography. One thrived, one suffered, and the red cans kept moving. Then there is Colombia. Between 1990 and 2002, 8 trade union leaders working at Coca-Cola bottling plants in Colombia were murdered. Hundreds more received death threats. Union organizers reported systematic intimidation and violence by paramilitary groups operating in and around Coca-Cola facilities. In 2001, the Colombian trade union Sinaltranal filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida. The lawsuit alleged that Coca-Cola and its Colombian bottling partners had collaborated with, or knowingly benefited from, the paramilitary violence used against workers who had simply organized for better pay and safer working conditions. These are not allegations made by activists on the internet. These are allegations filed in a federal court in the United States with named plaintiffs, named defendants, and documented evidence. Coca-Cola denied everything. The case was dismissed in 2006 on the grounds that U.S. courts did not have jurisdiction over events that occurred in Colombia. The families of the 8 murdered union leaders received no justice through that legal process. The men who asked for fair pay never came home, and Coca-Cola kept selling. Here is what is most important to understand about everything you have just heard. None of it happened by accident. The paid scientists, the funded organizations, the water extraction, the court challenges, the denials. These were not mistakes. They were not oversights. They were decisions made by intelligent, educated people in boardrooms who understood exactly what they were doing and calculated that the cost of doing it was worth the return. That calculation has been correct every single time. Because Coca Cola spent 138 years building something more powerful than a product. They built a feeling. Share a Coke. Open happiness. Holidays are coming. The polar bears, the Christmas trucks, the World Cup, the Olympics, the carefully engineered association between a red can and every moment of joy, celebration, family, and comfort that exists in human life. And as long as you associate that feeling with happiness, you will not stop, at the moment you reach for a can, to ask what was behind it. You will never think about the Harvard scientists and what they were paid to conclude. You will never think about Plachimada. You will never think about the 8 union leaders in Colombia who never came home. Because Coca Cola has spent 138 years and billions of dollars making sure those thoughts never occur to you at exactly that moment. Every second, somewhere in the world, someone is opening a Coca Cola. You now know what has been behind that red label since 1886. Cocaine started the habit, the sugar that replaced it, the scientists who were paid to protect it, the communities whose water was taken for it, the workers in Colombia who died trying to improve conditions within it. Most people who watch this will reach for a can tomorrow. Not because they are foolish, not because they do not care, because 138 years of the most sophisticated marketing operation in human history is more powerful than one video. But you watch this for a reason. And the next time you see that red can, that familiar logo, that promise of happiness, you will know exactly what is behind it. What you do with that knowledge is entirely up to you.